Record. All right. I think we're live. We're recording. Well, not actually live if it's a recording, but we're here. Hey,
We're
how's it going,
live,
Steve?
and good morning, Mehgan Heaney-Grier. How are you?
It's good. I'm good. It's good to see you.
Great to see you too, and great to be talking with you. And
Likewise. Yeah. Welcome to DEMA. A little different vibe this year, huh?
a little different vibe, but hey, we get to talk and record, and hopefully people will tune in now and then, and we'll be able to see or talk to them at least. And
Absolutely. I
I
think
am
all
looking
all of
forward to see
us.
how DEMA goes this year, and jumping around between booths. That's going to be fun to try something new.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of us divers are hungry for just connecting and getting some, even if we're not able to get in the water wherever we're at, that we're able to connect and at least,
Yeah.
get our fins wet, so to speak, just even in the virtual way here.
Yeah, yeah. And we
Do
will
what we
have one
can.
live. We do have the one live event too with Lionfish, where we're going to have a Lionfish panel this year. So that'll be fun.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that will be really fun. Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm excited to be here. I think with Lionfish University, I think that there's so much important stuff that's going on, and everybody, we're collectively just having this heightened awareness of the environment and what's going on around us and how it's impacting our industry in particular with the ocean. And I love how with Lionfish University, it's a really specific issue. It's like one thing involved in this much bigger picture that we can all individually take part in and really take back some of that control, because so much of the time it feels like these issues are so big with the environment and the ocean, and it can feel like we're helpless in the course of things. And this is all the work that is going on with Lionfish University. That's why I love being involved with this group, is because it's empowering in that way, and I really love that.
Lionfish is one of those great examples, and thankfully so, that where you really can do something about a problem. And some are so big that we can't individually do much about it. The whole climate change problem and a bunch of big ones like that, ozone, and it takes a whole lot more than just individual action to do things like that. But collectively, a lot of individuals have really come to the front, come to the force, I guess you'd say, for Lionfish, and it's having an impact. So it's been a really
Absolutely.
interesting ride with a bunch of super interesting people and a lot of new friends and acquaintances along the way. So it's been a really I don't know, enjoyable ride, even though it's addressing a big environmental problem, and we're all quite worried about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say though that even with the big, really, the much larger issues like climate change and all of that, I think that we always have more control and power than we think we do in these situations, because they can be so overwhelming that they just feel, it kind of gives us the illusion that anything we do won't make a difference. But if you think about it, that's how we got here. We're all these little things pecking away and building and building and building. And if I've learned one thing, it was a quick story I'll tell you. So in 2005, we got hit really hard by all the hurricanes down in the Florida Keys where I grew up. And I had just finished putting together my house and all this stuff and doing some carpentry with my dad and learning it. And what I learned after we got hit so hard, I had to take everything apart. And it was this really interesting process. And I look at conservation and the big issues that we're facing in somewhat of the same way, but everything had flooded with this contaminated salt water. And it was really a difficult time, where you see everything that you'd put together and done, it was like ruined. And so I started slowly dismantling from 4 foot down, all the flooded water that came in. And I learned with this hands-on work that whatever I was taking apart could be put back together, and vice versa. That there's this ebb and flow, that, we construct these things, but we also can roll them back and do that. And we play a part in that. So it's not anything that can be put together can also be taken apart. And I think that with the problems that we face in the environment, it's exactly the same thing, that these problems have been constructed by us. We all play a role in this movie, right? And we can also take action to dial that back and change that. There's so much hope out there, but you have to have the empowerment and you have to have the audacity to tap into that.
It's interesting while you were talking about taking things apart and putting things together. I was thinking back to probably the most famous quote in conservation, Aldo Leopold's quote: "The most important thing in intelligent tinkering is keeping all the parts," which is a real,
I
it's
love
a
it.
biodiversity statement, because it says, well, you grew up in the Florida Keys, you know, things have changed a lot on the reefs down
Yes.
there. And they're just, if nothing else, you can just tell they're quieter than they used to be 30, 40 years ago. And a lot of species are just not active like they were back then.
Right.
And of course, the abundances are way down. So, but as long as all those species are still down there somewhere, there's a chance that they can come back. They just need to have the foot taken off the neck of nature
Right.
and reduce those stressors that are putting them in submission. And things bounce back really quickly in the ocean when given the chance. So if all the parts are there, there's still hope for the ecosystem, even as altered as the Florida Keys is.
Absolutely. And I think, we're having this collective, like, heightened awareness about how everything is so connected. It's no longer like, oh, well, I live in the middle of the country, or I'm not a diver, or I'm not this or whatever, or I'm scared to go swimming in the ocean. It doesn't matter. You don't even have to ever see the ocean to have, or the environment for that matter. If you live in the smack dab middle of a city, that stuff is impacting your world every day. And I just feel like we're having this collective growth in awareness of that because of
Yeah,
what's been going on with climate change and the impacts that everybody is beginning to feel, like so many other places, coastal regions, and a lot of the marginalized groups and things like that. People have been feeling the impacts of climate. Many people have been feeling the impacts of climate change for years
yeah.
now. Everybody, it's like it keeps growing and growing, and everybody's being touched by it, whether it's droughts and and flooding and the hurricanes and intensified storms and frequency. I mean, it's been nuts the last couple of years. And then these fires, that, I mean, it's just, if you haven't personally been impacted, one, I think that might be kind of a miracle, and two, you definitely know somebody close to you that's been impacted or evacuated or lost a home in a fire or whatever it is. I mean, I just
Yeah.
think it's a sad state of affairs, but we can make changes in our
Well,
day-to-day life. And
interesting thing about connectivity as well is, connectivity got us into this problem, but connectivity is also going to get us out of it if anything does. And I'd say that because, the science of connectivity, the studies that have been going on the last decade or so are showing definitely that those kinds of connections that you're describing between land and sea, between places in the ocean,
mhm,
there's this physical and biological connectivity across the ocean that's undeniable. And
right,
everybody always knew that existed, but the science is supporting it very strongly now. But there's also this next level of connectivity, and that's the social connectivity.
yeah,
And that, look at Lionfish University and other social networks that have built around the lionfish problem, for example. The connections that are happening between people so that we can talk to each other and
yeah,
communicate. That's what we've lacked in the past, and people not knowing what the right hand's doing when the left hand's doing something else. Now we all know we can communicate and pass good ideas around. And those good ideas, in the lionfish story have been, things like derbies and tournaments and uh, ways to control the populations, and the science of connections, and understanding that local action can really um, control local populations of lionfish. But you've got to do that in a lot of places if you want to do it over the entirety of the invaded range. But you got to pass those good ideas around, and people like Lionfish University have been doing that, and that's been really helping us do something about this one problem.
right. And I see two things at play there, which I really love. One is that this is really, we see with the lionfish issue in particular, and the work that Lionfish University has done, and all of us ambassadors working with Lionfish University, of spreading the word, and like Alex running the derbies, and Holden, and like all this stuff going on, and Rachel, the hunters and the doing it, and the characters that have come together. So this really becomes a people story, which is what we need to be able to connect to it. So in the conservation and scientific communication bridge just to the general public and what we can digest and what we feel like we have the ability and time to digest in our day-to-day life with kids and work and obligations and pandemics and, you know, all the stuff going on. It's like, it's so important to bring in that people story, that the connection that we all have to it and why it matters. And then the other thing that I see in play here, which I love, is because we have this heightened awareness of everybody kind of going, okay, I'm seeing how these things are connected now, and I'm understanding why I care and why I need to care and why I need to make some changes. But tell me what I can do. I get that question all the time, but like, you know, we care, but we don't know what to do. And I love that the lionfish hunting, you know, for people who live on the coast and can harness some of that control, they're able to go out hunting. The people that don't live on the coast can ask for lionfish in Whole Foods or your supermarket and try and drive that market for this invasive species. Or, you know, I mean, all the other beautiful like jewelry and the cookbooks and all that, this whole industry that's built around it. And what all of that tells me is that all these people, the majority of us, care. We want to be able to do something about the problems that we're seeing in our environment because we understand it in a different way, in a heightened way, that we understand now how this impacts me and my child, or, you know, the children of the world and the future. And so what can I do? And then Lionfish University is helping, and other organizations like that are helping provide that. What can I do here?
Yeah, they give you that opportunity to take that first step.
Right.
Because once you take that first dip into the water on lionfish, whether it's, you know, some business enterprise or menu or cooking or hunting and selling lionfish or whatever it is, or even just communicating about it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you take that first step, you start meeting these strange and interesting characters that are all part of this big story. And it's what we call the silver lining of lionfish. All these interesting things that have happened and become part of the culture of lionfish, that have become not just ways to make money, but ways for people to really have some gratifying experiences and be empowered to do things, like you said. But it takes always that first step and getting started. And once you get started, you're hooked. That's the way I did it with the traps that I started working on. I went to a talk years ago and saw the video of people trying to fix lobster traps so they would catch lionfish instead of lobster. And yeah, there were a few lionfish inside the trap, but there were a bunch of lionfish outside the trap. And I thought, you know, if you just pull up the trap, you're leaving 90% of the fish down there, lionfish. Why can't we build some kind of a trap that contains all those fish that are hanging around that trap when it comes up? So that's the way I got started. And once I did, I was hooked myself. And I've stayed with it for years now, and we're still trying to develop these traps. And but we have had a lot of successes with them, and Holden Harris and Alex and others have been doing some testing and showing some success with them. So now we're at this point where these traps just need commercial testing now to make sure commercial fishermen can use them as well as this science community has, and even better, they have to use them better. They have to catch more fish. Once they do, then we'll be getting lionfish out of deep water, and they'll be doing their part. Fishermen making money while doing conservation. There's a concept that's,
right.
You know, not,
yeah.
you know.
And so for anybody who's viewing, Steve, that maybe doesn't know about the trap that you developed and are working on in different ways, maybe tell some of the components about, well, or just, you know, a little bit of the story about how that, you told a little bit of it there about how that came to be and you got the idea, but take us from there through some of the development and where it's at now for the traps.
Okay, I'll give you a quick run through. This talk that I went to back in Corpus Christi at the Gulf and Caribbean Fisheries Institute meeting, 2014 or so maybe. I said, why can't we pull all the lionfish up that are attracted to these lobster traps, even though they don't go in the lobster traps? So what if we were to splay a net out on the bottom somehow, and then when we pulled the net up, it would close like a big bag around all the fish and pull them all up? So I started working on a curtain trap, I called it. It was a PVC contraption where the netting slid up and down the side of the trap. So when it laid on the bottom, the net was down at the bottom of the trap. And then when you pull it up, the curtain of netting would close around all the fish that were attracted to this structure. And I put a pickle buckets in the middle to
Mm-hmm.
attract the fish. And they did. The lionfish were really highly attracted to this pickle buckets. They're really attracted to structure more than most fish are. So I had a few design changes over the years where now the thing looks like a big, one of those little, remember those little coin change purses that you'd
Mm-hmm.
have when you were a kid, a little
Yep.
bag hanging down and a thing opens up and the hinges open. Well, now I have a 6-foot version of that, a little coin purse. I call it a purse trap. And it's when it hits the bottom, it splays out on the bottom into a big 6-foot circle of netting with up from the center comes this piece of plastic lattice work. It's just that. It's just a piece of fencing. And lionfish come to it. And no bait required, so you don't get a bunch of other fish that you don't want. Lionfish are just attracted to the structure. And then when you pull it up, the netting, the frame closes around this structure, this piece of fencing, and the net billows around the fish, and you've got all the fish that were attracted to the structure at once instead of losing them like you would around a lobster trap.
Mm-hmm.
So the trap has been really successful. It's gone through a bunch of design changes, and now just this weekend I was building a 1/6 model, a 1-foot trap, to show all the final components that I've come up with, trying to get all the details just right so that we can sort of pass that around to people and by video and show them how to build their own trap. They're really quite easy to build with just with some rebar, netting, and fencing, and a few little gadgets like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an awesome story, and I was really intrigued the first time I heard, about your trap, and then got to see kind of the mechanisms that you were putting together. And I think that what I love about that is that, well, it's like about solving whatever problem is out there. And so I love that approach on any issue that, that comes up, especially having to do with the environment. So if we have the problem that these fish are attacking the juvenile species that become the larger fish that are really important in fisheries, which impacts obviously fishing families and fishermen and women and their families, because their target species is being impacted. It has a negative impact on the environment because of how everything's connected, on the coral reef and everything else. And it just kind of cascades down. So we have that problem. And then with the trap, it's so cool because, and I remember you talking about it before, that you were trying to get the patent so you would be able to offer it to fishing communities, at little to no cost, and offer like you were just talking about, this video or whatever it is, whatever mechanism it is, to teach them how to build it themselves, because, it's going to allow families and people, professionals that rely on the ocean and taking things out of the ocean, a new resource for income. And then, like all the other businesses that we were saying, are tied to that. If you utilize, kind of in the traditional philosophy of using the whole animal, being able to use the fins and the meat, and doing something good for the environment when you're taking them out of their range that they've invaded. So I love that whole thing in a nutshell. It's so symbolic and such a good example of how your idea, and can grow and spread, and then really have a positive impact on the world
That
around
was
you
the
and way
idea.
beyond.
Help people make money and do conservation at the same time. Seemed like a match made in heaven if we could make it work. And for me, it was a personal challenge, sure, not being an engineer, to come up with a trap like this, but it was also part of my job, honestly. Being the science coordinator for the marine sanctuaries in the U.S., we have several of them that are affected by lionfish. So we had to do something to start to deal with control on lionfish. So we put together a bunch of plans, or some plans, to do education and outreach and research and monitoring and all that. And the traps are part of that whole response mechanism or response plan to deal with the lionfish problem in marine sanctuaries. But of course, it can be exported to anywhere. And that was the idea with the idea of patenting. So we didn't want anybody stopping us from keeping this as an open source technology, if you want to call
Right.
it
Yeah.
that.
You protect the ability to share it, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
pretty
is
much.
awesome.
Well, Megan, we could talk all day, I'm sure, about all kinds of things, but let's finish up with something personal to you. And that is something called what? The imperfect conservationist.
Yes.
What's going on with
So
the imperfect conservationist?
the imperfect conservationist, which is me and you and all of us, I believe. So I have a new project that I'm getting ready to launch, and it's a video blog. And, kind of, this is like the perfect pivot, because in thinking about seeing a problem and then trying to come up with something to use my skill set to help solve that problem, what I have experienced in, working in this field of conservation is a growing feeling of disempowerment among people, and a lot of strain and ecological grief among people working the front lines of conservation. And collectively, this can really start to bring us all down. We're getting bombarded with information and the big sweeping problems that are facing our environment and our ocean today and all of this stuff. So it can just, and I was experiencing this feeling myself so much, where it was like, man, I just want to pretend it's not happening. And I just want to like hide under the covers until it all goes away and somehow is miraculously fixed. And I was thinking, man, if I am feeling this way with the, just the stuff I'm tapped into and the information that I have, working in the field of conservation, I'm like, man, everybody that cares must be feeling some version of that. So what can I do? How can I try and help solve this problem? And I have a background working on camera, and I'm extremely passionate about the ocean and being underwater, and have a lot of gained experience from diving all over the world and seeing the underwater world back in the Florida Keys, my home, change over the years. And so bringing all of these things together, I created a video blog, which I'm getting ready to launch. So you can, it's going to launch on December 3rd, and people can go sign up for the newsletter, because you'll get some, early insider things as I'm getting ready to launch and all of that. My website is MehganHeaney-Grier.com, or you can also go to freediver.com, easier to spell. And it'll bring you to the same place, and sign up for my newsletter there. But the video blog is basically small, bite-sized, actionable things that we all can do every day to that can really just be baked into your day-to-day life, that help to create conservation empowerment, essentially. So conservation empowerment is, landing in that empowered middle ground and being able to understand how and what you can do every day to make a positive difference in the world around you, and start taking back some of that control. And what I have found in my experience is that builds on itself. And you get into this, what I think I coined this term, and I really like this image to create this for people. It's that it's the inspiration infinity loop. And so when you start feeling inspired to do something, and you start taking these little actions, and like, I'm saying, like, so small you almost forget you're doing them. You just they become just like basic habit. But you feel inspired, and other people get inspired by that. And then that is proof. That is that feedback and that proof from the world around you that you actually do have an impact, and you can make changes in the world around you beyond yourself. Because it's not really just, these little things that we can continue to do, but it's these small actions drive change, because they're sustainable and achievable, and they catch on. And so this video blog, I'm keeping it light and fun and entertaining and fast paced, because I think that, we all are busy and on the move, and it'll be important to do that. And as I'm getting ready to launch, I'm going to be covering, a bunch of different topics, having to do with conservation and the little things that we can do every day to take action, covering different ideas and concepts and products and things like that. And I want it's geared to be very interactive as well with the audience, because I want to hear from people about their conservation challenges and successes, victories of what has worked. And I think that that's really where we get this collective, just this creative soup going, of where, okay, so this worked for me, and we can start moving things, this worked for you, and we can start moving things forward collectively in that way.
Mehgan, having worked with you in Antigua on our lionfish project down there, we were helping Antigua prep for their lionfish problem and do something about it. I can vouch that you live conservation. Everything you talk about and everything you do is like you said, baked into your life. It's really part of your essence. And if you can get just a few people to jump on that train with you, you'll have a big impact with this new vlog.
Well, thank you, Steve. But I will say that I am incredibly imperfect with the whole process. And there's a lot of times where I'm falling so short of, the expectations I put on myself, or I feel like the world is putting on me to live up to that, trying to do it perfectly and do it all. I mean, it's not possible. And that is the most important part of this, is that, we're learning, we're growing, we're human, we are imperfect by nature. And that is the secret sauce here, really, about being able to embrace our power and feel empowered and inspired and take back some of that control. And that alone is what I want to wake up to every day. I want to feel like I don't need to run and hide from the issues, but that here's what I'm doing. This is a concrete thing. And you know what? It just inspired somebody else. And my God, talk about filling your tank. Is that impact we can have on each other is enormous and paramount in solving these conservation issues.
If nothing else, it is the perfect name for a vlog, I think.
Absolutely. So I hope everybody tunes in. I'm really excited about it. And just gonna really try and address some of the disempowerment and bring that back to all of us in some way.
Can't wait. December 3rd.
Yes, The Imperfect Conservationist, my video blog or vlog for all of those that know that term. And come sign up on my website. I'm launching a new website with the project as well. And Mehgan Heaney-Grier.com or freediver.com. You can go there. Imperfectconservationist.com. All of the above will point to this page. And the video blog comes out on December 3rd.
Great. Can't wait. Well, let's let everybody go to the next booth, I guess, right? Isn't that what happens?
Sounds good. Yeah, I guess, right? This is a new experience for all of us.
I know. So great seeing you, Mehgan, and talking. Really enjoyed it.
You too, Steve. You too.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Catch you soon.